We really had some good examples of actions to using traditional cultural knowledge for tribal security and for our tribal nations in California. We've had some policy conversation and some management and implementation issues with state parks conversations. I think you should all give yourselves a giant round of applause for being here at 6:30 still. So thank you all for your attention. We were thinking it was a very long day, and I think this task force at the end, at the end of the day, but it's a very important opportunity that we have to carry the water for those that can't at the moment. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to have our very smart colleagues in the National Park Service officially participating. I will say that we're proud that some of them may be here on their personal time, but I think it's these kinds of opportunities that we have to carry the water for the nation at the moment. We're very fortunate that Governor Brown sees the value in that. We're very hopeful that our new governor, whoever that may be, will see the value in it and continue this work. But we'll just keep standing on our soapbox until somebody kicks us off. And I'm very pleased that we have so many wonderful partners with whom to do that. And I think the most valuable thing about this task force is we don't really have an end game identified, but I think that that's the carrot about it, that's the value of it, and I think that's the excitement about it, is that it really is going to be what we've all decided it should be collectively. So I'm going to just give some closing statements about logistics. And then Bob and Andrew are going to come up and wrap up with some very smart and lovely wise words for us. So you've all, by virtue of hanging in for the whole day, we welcome you at the U.S. Mint on 5th and Mission. If you go out the door, you go to the right, you go to 5th Street, you'll see the giant, lovely building, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Your registration includes a ticket to that, so we hope you'll all join us. If you have colleagues or friends, loved ones, somebody who looks interesting on the walk over, who you would like. It's an open reception, and we are able to take payment at the door. So please welcome anybody who would like to join us today. And finally, I would just like to say what a great honor it is for me to be California State Historic Preservation Officer in this time especially. I started my career in the environmental movement. I made the first recycled products database in California when I was 12, so 1980 something. And I've made my way around to preservation and back to what I think is community sustainability, because I think that it really is these intersections. To me, they're not intersections, it's about the entire place, and maybe the intersections are the woven paths that we as practitioners have made for ourselves. But really, we have to look at the entire place and remember that we won't lose authority when we work together. We together are rowing better. And so I encourage us all to do that. And I just thank you so much for being here today and for joining in this conversation, not only now, but the call to action going forward. So thank you. And with that, Bob and Andrew, would you please come up? And thank you to our panel.
I asked Bob to make some concluding remarks, and it was quite strategic asking Bob to do this. Bob is not from a Ministry of Culture or a heritage agency, and I've been fascinated all day by the feedback from the people that have joined us that do not come from the heritage space and how they are perceiving what we're doing, our ambitions, and what we can contribute. And so, Bob, I'm keen to know from a person who doesn't live and breathe heritage every minute what you've made of this.
Thank you very much. It's been a fascinating day. I think in the Talanoa spirit, I'd like to close with two stories that hopefully touch on some of the threads that have been discussed today. The first story is really to try to put what we're doing today and tomorrow into a broader context. And it's a story about Ban Ki-moon and Christiana Figueres. Ban Ki-moon as the former Secretary General of the United Nations, and Christiana Figueres, head of UN climate change. And I think the story starts in 2009 when the Copenhagen Climate Summit collapsed without a climate agreement. And people had to put their heads together to see how can we, within the next several years, come up with a meaningful climate agreement. The Kyoto Protocol was rapidly running out. It had been seen as a failed or not a very effective instrument. It was not including any climate action by the two top emitter countries, the United States and China. And so people were scratching their heads, how do we come up with a strong and meaningful international agreement? And to do that is very difficult in the United Nations. You need consensus among 195 countries, plus or minus. You need a consensus that no one objects to reach an agreement. And so this was the challenge they faced in the ruins of the Copenhagen summit. And one thing they realized is that countries or member states could not go it alone, that they needed to bring in civil society. And there were two reasons for this. One was to encourage politicians to come up with a strong agreement. If they could see that the business community and that cities and the non-governmental sector were all in favor of climate action, it would be much more difficult for politicians to wiggle out of taking climate action. And also because to really bend the needle and get the world where it needed to be required not just action by governments, but by all of society. There was that realization too. And so in early 2014, Ban Ki-moon convened about a half dozen heads of UN agencies and said, we need to launch a number of multi-stakeholder initiatives to really bring in under the UN tent civil society to take climate action. And that was done in September of that year at what's known as the Ban Ki-moon Climate Summit. A number of multi-stakeholder initiatives were launched in various sectors. The ones that we work the most closely with are what is now called the Global Covenant of Mayors. Then it was launched as the Compact of Mayors. It was later merged and became the Global Covenant of Mayors. And a number of other initiatives in various sectors. Some have gone on to do great things, some are so-so, and some haven't been heard of again. But this was part of the mobilization of civil society. And that did help contribute to the success 18 months later in Paris of the Paris Climate Agreement that is truly a success, that is truly bending the needle. It's not bending the needle as fast or as far as we need to go, but it is truly a remarkable achievement, and it contains mechanisms for ratcheting up and towards ever more ambitious climate action. So that's the one story. The second story is either you could consider it a new chapter of the same story or a new story, and that's the story that we're starting here today. And if you look at the three Talanoa questions, you see they're structured like a story. Where are we now? Where do we want to go? How do we get there? It's the start of a story. And I think in this room, I've been looking all day at the pictures by children hung around the walls, and it's like the eyes of future generations are looking upon us here, and that we can see messages of peace, and there are rainbows and hope, and we love the animals. And also there's a very well-drawn volcano there also that I've been admiring, that also says there are risks and also, but I think this is a new chapter in a way. In 2014, the Compact of Mayors was launched, and it's wonderful to have mayors and elected officials involved. But I think the new chapter is there are other major parts of civil society that have to be mobilized for collective action in this way. Last year we realized that urban planners didn't really have a space in the cooperative initiatives taking climate action. So we reached out to global and regional and national networks and found a lot of interest. And this is a well-organized body of professionals, and so we helped form a new initiative, Planners for Climate Action. And I think this is part of the same effort here with Climate Heritage Network, is that there's an important body of tens of thousands of professionals out there that should be mobilized as part of this effort. And I think that's, I hope, what we've seen today. But for it to be a story, for this to be the start of a story, this can't be a one-off event. This can't be just, we came together one day and we shared experiences and we all went home and that was it. This has to, I think Andrew at the beginning of the day reminded us of the definition of mobilization, and that it's coming together in pursuit of a practical objective. And that means it's not just a one-time thing. It has to be a beginning and to move forward. And indeed, defining a practical objectives is important and takes considerable thought. We found with dealing with UN climate change that to be recognized as a real cooperative initiative, indeed, it has to have practical objectives that can be measured, and we can see if this is really achieving something. So it is, I think, also a challenge. What could be the value added of a Climate Heritage Network? What can that group do that existing networks cannot do? I think, and I'm quite confident this group will find those that to share experiences, different during the course of the day today. Different panelists talked about different tools they've developed. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel every time we need a new tool. That countries have to learn from what Scotland is doing or what other places are doing, and it can't just be the global north. The global north has things to learn from the global south in this area, and the global south has things to learn from the global north. Have to be sharing. Maybe a repository of different tools that integrate cultural heritage and climate change is a good first step that then make it easy for practitioners in one country to see what practitioners in other countries are doing. There is a lot to be done, and I think both bringing together cultural heritage specialists in different countries to learn from each other, but also different types of partners also have to be involved. And so I do think this is the start to a great story, and I think the work will continue even tomorrow, I think, to try to make sense of all we heard today and figure out what are the next steps. But on the part of my agency, UN Habitat, we're really happy to be part of the story, and we hope to continue that. And I think would just ask that we end with a big round of applause to our organizers, Julie and Andrew, that really have this rare gift to perceive a need and a vision and pull together this diverse group of people to make it happen. So please join me in a big round of applause.
I'll say two things. It has been a long day. Even my husband left because he was tired of hearing me talk. Bob was talking about storytelling, and it reminded me of this lovely tradition that these dear friends of mine have with their children at night, where they all sit in bed and they each have a sentence. So the child starts, and she's 10, and they say, "Audrey, what was your day like? What was the best thing about your day today?" And she says, "My favorite thing is Daddy let me have candy." And the mother's eyes get big. And then the next child speaks and finishes the next sentence, and then the mother and the father, and they go around and they create this story about their favorite things in a day. And so I think that that's really maybe what we're doing. So think about your favorite thing today, and then find somebody else in your network to have that conversation with, and keep having it and keep building that story together.
First, I just want to say it's been a real treat and a pleasure to work with Julie. I can't say enough about that and how this, in a very concrete, honestly speaking way, this would not have happened without Julie and her leadership. And there's a reason why there hasn't been an official Heritage side event at any of the other global climate change meetings. And it's because we haven't had the connectivity to the people that set the agenda. And Julie has been that connectivity, and we really owe it to her that we had this opportunity, and that's not an exaggeration. So, Julie, thank you. If you do want to be a part of the conversation, one way to help assure that is to sign up on a list that we have. If you go to climateheritage.org and click on the Climate Heritage Network tab, you can sign up. There's a form on the web page, and we'll have your email address, and we'll try to keep you in the loop as best we can as this organically grows. One of the best compliments we got all day was it was said that those of us who are here today will tell our grandchildren that we attended this meeting, that something consequential came out of this meeting, a sea change, a mobilization, and I was so honored to hear that, and now I'm inspired to make that prophecy come true, and I hope I'll be doing it with you. And so thank you again for coming.